Hello, everybody. This is Francesco Rulli. I'm the CEO of Querlo. I am also the Chief Cognitive and Digital Officer for the Florence Cathedral, also known as the Duomo of Florence. I'm here today with Sarah Prodan. This is our second interview. She's a professor at Stanford University and also a Michelangelo expert and a specialist. So, Sarah, thank you to be here with us today.
Of course, it's my pleasure.
So we would like to, let's talk about education. You had some questions to me. If you want to go ahead and.
Yes, of course. In light of many recent events, I was curious to know more about your experience in digital education. I know that you had some experience with classroom design and digital education in Afghanistan, and I'm just curious, about your past experience and what your thoughts are on AI as it pertains to education now and going forward.
Yes. So to make a long story short, back in 2011, I started the sponsorship of building classrooms, IT classrooms in the west of Afghanistan and also in Kabul. We sponsored the construction and also the management of 13 classrooms that were dedicated to the education of young women so that they would actually become financially self-sufficient through learning how to live on digital platforms. We in fact launched an organization called the Digital Citizen Fund. That was an organization dedicated to this type of citizenship on digital platforms. In 2013, we even introduced the payment system of Bitcoin to those students. In fact, I have here a copy of The Age of Cryptocurrency. That is a book written by two journalists of the Wall Street Journal, Paul Vigna and Michael Casey, that spoke about the introduction of cryptocurrency as a system of payment. But unfortunately, in 2015, we lost the control of those classrooms. And that's when we decided to introduce the use of chatbots and artificial intelligence for this type of education. And then we created a series of chatbots. The first group was a group of 10 lessons for financial literacy, okay? So the interesting aspect about introducing artificial intelligence is that we realize that especially young people enjoy a lot to interact with artificial intelligence entities. The fact that the artificial intelligence is an independent entity who doesn't have a gender, who doesn't have a political orientation, who doesn't have an image, right? Doesn't have a beard or long hair, doesn't have like a human existence, allowed the students to express their thoughts and interact more freely. This also allows us to cut costs tremendously because the construction of a classroom, the maintenance of the classroom, to have teachers, and also the liability. Simply, if the weather is bad, maybe the teachers don't make it to the school, or maybe the students don't make it to the school. Instead of using chatbots and engaging students on social media made our life much easier and provided us a lot more insight about the students. And in this circumstance where the educational system is suffering because of basically the Taliban or the conservative parties taking over, this is very interesting, and this renews the need to bring everybody back into this digital format, right? And in my humble opinion, it doesn't matter if it's a very conservative head of the family or even a Taliban or is a young student. Everybody today has one of those little things here, and everybody is now engaging on social media, engaging online, and that's why the presence of artificial intelligence for educational purpose is very, very relevant. And eventually also the reintroduction of cryptocurrency as micro scholarships. So this is a little my experience. Okay.
So I've had some experience with your Michelangelo chatbot. We've talked about this before, and interacting and seeing what kind of answers were offered to some of the questions, and thinking about the inputs. Who's creating the databases behind all of this, and I was wondering what your hope is for these chatbots in classrooms at universities and other places. I mean, what are your aspirations beyond the Michelangelo chatbot for this particular form of AI in a classroom context?
Well, I believe that it would be very interesting to bring a lot of the elements of what is taught in school into this new space called the metaverse. All right. So I have 3 kids ranging between 10 and 15 years old. They spend a lot of time playing video games, unfortunately. And some of those are metaverse, like, for example, GTA or different spaces. And unfortunately, in the spaces, there is a lot of car racing. There is a lot of shooting. There is a lot of gamification that is not really educational. I think it's time for educational institutions as well as museums to be present on those metaverse. And it would be very interesting to use artificial intelligence as a way to empower those characters or this content that is available in the metaverse, so that regardless of your geographical location or also of your financial means, you can start getting some education. I'm not thinking that you can take an entire course of education, for example, from Stanford, but why not to have a little bit of an introduction of the opportunity so that you can switch from pure entertainment and gamification into actually learning something. Recently, I don't want to give it away, we were thinking about the metaverse for organs, right? For some institutions that are in the space of anatomy. There can be a metaverse, for example, for art, where maybe is there that Michelangelo is walking around as one of the elements in this metaverse in which you can engage with and have a conversation. And maybe this Michelangelo and artificial intelligence can interact with us also about something more recent, so that we can actually merge the knowledge base from Michelangelo into maybe the perspective of a contemporary artist or an engineering project that is, it wasn't really part of Michelangelo's experience, but where at this point we can merge the two knowledge base and see if we can find some points of contact. So that's my thought. But what's your perspective about artificial intelligence in the classroom from your experience as a professor?
Well, there's AI specifically, and then there are digital applications generally. And I would say both in research and in teaching, the digital aspect has become really important. I work on literature and art, and so often drawing, in my own research and in the classroom, on some of these applications, for instance, to run through an entire poetry book, looking for certain words and uses of things, can provide the kind of objective, concrete information to help shape and contextualize interpretations and understanding of a given body of work, and also to call into question past interpretations of things, because they provide new objective input against which to measure our more partial, I guess, interpretations of things based on intuition and experience of literature and art. So that question of impartiality and fresh inputs to include in interpretations of works, literary and artistic, I think is really important. And so to that extent, I think in the classroom, there's a lot of room to engage with this for students on their own, as part of their own research and investigation into a work of art, a series of works of literature, a historical figure, to be able to engage with these technologies is really, really helpful. But also in the class. So imagine we're walking through the interpretation of a work of art, and we want to assess things like the direction light is coming from and some of the concrete elements of a work on which we base our broader interpretations. And there have been certain digital applications and forms of artificial intelligence I've seen from colleagues here that are really drawing out new factual information out of some masterworks and leading us to think about them differently and think about how we approach our own interpretations a little more critically. So both for research and as a pedagogical tool to assist specific forms of learning, but even just to get students thinking about how it is that we think and how we might do that differently. I think it's tremendously important.
Fantastic. So hopefully I would like to see if in your future programs, you will be able to present the artificial intelligence to Michelangelo to your students, because it will be very interesting to see their questions and also how they're going to pressure test our knowledge base so that we can constantly improve it.
Indeed.
So it's a discovery from both ends.
It is.
All right. So thank you very much, Sarah. It was fantastic to talk to you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.